In the winter of 1934, high in the rocky slopes above Los Angeles, a small group of men carried lanterns and rope up to an iron door embedded in the stone. A door that had no logical reason to be there. According to local law, none of them ever came back out. Whispers about that door had circulated among the hill dwellers since the previous century. Rumors spoke of Spanish gold buried in the hillside, a rusted iron slab with no hinges or lock, and an old warning never to open it. The reality turned out to be far weirder than any legend, and it's a matter of public record. On January 29, 1934, the Los Angeles Times ran a front-page story claiming that beneath the city's business district lay a sprawling network of tunnels and a treasure vault belonging to a forgotten civilization. The man behind the claim was G. Warren Shufelt, a mining engineer, not some sidewalk fantasist. He asserted that a device he called a radio X-ray could see straight through the ground beneath Los Angeles, tracing a maze of passages that stretched from the public library to the northern hills, laid out in the shape of a giant lizard. Shufelt said an old Native American had told him of a people who went underground 5,000 years ago to escape celestial fire, leaving behind gold tablets and a chamber storing all their possessions. Shufelt secured a county permit, signed a contract to split any gold found 50-50, began sinking a shaft into Fort Moore Hill right above downtown. The drill cut more than 200 feet down. Then everything ground to a halt, and mud flooded the shaft. Funds ran out. The newspapers lost interest. Shufelt disappeared from public life as abruptly as he had entered it. He actually fined under Los Angeles. Why abandon a shaft so close to its goal? How does any of this connect to that iron door in the rock? The one 4 men supposedly opened that same year and never returned through. Whatever remains of this tale is still down there, buried under a city that paved over it and moved on. To grasp why anyone believed Shufelt, you need to understand the hill itself. Fort Moore Hill sat on the edge of old downtown LA, and long before Shufelt aimed any device at it, the slope was already steeped in a century of treasure lore. Spanish gold, people said, coins and bullion hidden somewhere in the hill during the chaos of the Mexican-American War, never recovered, passed down through generations of prospectors. Men had been quietly digging into that hillside since the 1800s, working off tips, hand-drawn maps of dubious origin, stories someone's grandfather swore were true. Most came back with nothing. A few, the older folks insisted, didn't come back at all. Underlying all of it was the strangest rumor of all, that somewhere in the rock was a door. Not a mine entrance or a cellar. Iron door fitted flush into solid stone, with no visible means of opening it and no record of who built it. Those who claimed to have seen it never agreed on its exact location, only that it was warm to the touch and that the air around it felt wrong. For decades, all it remained, a tale old men told to keep boys off a dangerous slope. Then, in the summer and fall of 1933, a man arrived in Los Angeles who said he didn't need old maps or grandfather's tips. He claimed he could simply see through the rock to what was hidden inside. Warren Shufelt wasn't the kind of man easily dismissed on paper. He was a mining and geophysical engineer. In the summer of 1933, he was surveying the LA, as engineers do, hunting for oil, gold, anything valuable worth extracting. What set him apart was his machine. Shufelt claimed to have built a radio X-ray that operated on the principle that different underground materials emit distinct electrical signatures, which his device could detect at depth, even from miles away, he insisted. To a skeptic in 1933, it sounded like a dowsing rod dressed in scientific jargon. Maybe that's all it ever was. But here's what keeps this story from being a clean joke. When Shufelt took readings near downtown, the machine didn't produce random noise. It traced something, a pattern of voids in the rock running from what is now the Central Library out toward Mount Washington and the northern hills. Tunnels. Chambers large enough to look like rooms on his readings. Shufelt mapped them carefully, point by point, and when he stepped back to view the whole network on paper, he saw that the pattern was anything but random. The tunnels formed the outline of an enormous lizard, its head beneath the northeast part of the city, its tail under the downtown library. That was when an ordinary oil and gold survey turned into something else entirely. A man with a peculiar map needs a story to explain it, and Shufelt found one. He claimed that, after charting the lizard, he was taken to meet a Hopi figure he called Little Chief Greenleaf, who shared the legend behind the shape in the rock. Thousands of years ago, Greenleaf told him, people on this coast revered the lizard. When catastrophe came, fire and ruin falling on the surface, they didn't flee across the land, they went down. They carved 3 great cities into the earth along the Pacific, dissolving rock with techniques no one understands today, sealed themselves and their valuables underground. One of those cities, the legend said, lay directly beneath Los Angeles, shaped like the lizard they worshipped. Somewhere within was a key room, a vault under what is now Broadway and 2nd Street, holding their treasure and records, their entire history pressed into solid gold tablets. It's exactly the kind of story a conman invents to loosen investors' wallets. It's also exactly the kind of story that, once you've stared at a lizard-shaped map of real voids in the rock, becomes very hard to laugh off. And Shufelt didn't laugh. He believed it completely, enough to walk into the offices of the LA county supervisors and ask permission to dig his way down. Here's the detail that should stop you cold. The county said yes. In early 1934, Shufelt and his associates struck a deal with the LA County Board of Supervisors. He'd be allowed to sink a shaft into Fort Moore Hill. In exchange, the county would take 50% of any gold and treasure unearthed. Sit with that. This wasn't a rumor traded over whiskey in a back room. Government body looked at a man with a homemade machine and a legend about lizard people and decided the possibility was real enough to put in writing and notarize. January 29, 1934, the Los Angeles Times splashed the whole affair across its front page under a headline readers must have read twice to believe: People's Catacomb City Hunted. Reporter Gene Bosky's article announced to the city that it was living, in the paper's own words, above a lost world of catacombs filled with records of a race more advanced than anyone alive today, gathered to watch. Drilling began on the hill above the busiest downtown streets, while streetcars ran and shoppers passed below, mostly unaware that a few hundred feet overhead a man was boring straight down toward a treasure vault he swore he could see. For a few weeks in early spring 1934, genuinely looked like G. Warren Shufelt was about to pull a buried city out of the rock beneath downtown LA. Then the hill fought back. Now, I won't tell you that Shufelt's drill broke into a glowing chamber and found a door carved with lizard symbols. There's no evidence for that. I won't pretend there is. Here's what the record actually shows, and it's strange enough on its own. The shaft went past 100 feet, past 200. Deeper than anything that should have been hollow under that hill, and the deeper it went, the more it confirmed his readings. There were voids down there, spaces in the rock large enough to register as rooms. The modern explanation points to natural gas pockets and the ordinary geology of the LA basin. That may be the whole answer. It means the central testable part of Shufelt's claim, that there were tunnels and chambers under the city, wasn't simply fabricated. Something down there was hollow, and then, with the shaft creeping toward the exact depth his map marked as the key room, the dig collapsed, and mud began flooding the bottom. Engineers raised alarms about cave-ins, about the whole bore collapsing on the crew. Funding evaporated. The Times, which had plastered the lizard people across its front page in January, simply stopped covering it. By spring 1934, deepest shaft ever sunk into Fort Moore Hill in search of a lost city went quiet. The man who had poured everything into digging it did the one thing nobody expected. He stopped. Not slowed, paused to raise more money. He stopped and walked away, abandoning the closest he'd ever get to the thing he'd staked his reputation on. Think about the obsession it takes to convince a county government to let you mine a hill for lizard gold, to put your face on the front page of the city's biggest paper, to drill 200 feet toward a vault you're certain awaits. Like that, don't quietly give up 100 feet shy of the prize because of a little water. Yet that's what the record says he did. Shufelt withdrew from public life almost entirely after 1934. Flamboyant engineer with the Radio X-ray and the lost city map became a name in old newspaper clippings and nothing more. He died in 1957 and was buried in North Hollywood, No final interview, no memoir, no triumphant return to the hill. The shaft was never finished. One ever picked up where he left off. The tunnels he mapped, natural, invented, or something stranger, were left exactly where he found them, and the city built over them as if the whole episode had never happened. So the obvious questions went unanswered. What makes a man that certain abandon the dig at the finish line? What did the readings at the bottom actually show him before the water rose? Into the silence Shufelt left behind, an older, darker story crept back, the one about the iron door. This is where legend and record press right against each other. You have to decide for yourself where one ends and the other begins. The story the hill people told went like this. In that same year, 1934, the whole city buzzing about gold under Fort Moore Hill and Spanish treasure hidden in the slope, 4 men decided they wouldn't wait for Shufelt and his permit. They knew the old rumor, the iron door fitted into the rock above the city. And they went looking with lanterns, picks, and a charge of dynamite. A 5th man stayed outside to hold the rope and wait. The 4 went in one morning. The 5th waited until dark. No one came back up the rope. No shout, no tug, no sound from inside the rock. And when men climbed to the spot the next morning with lamps and rifles, the story goes there was no iron door, just smooth stone, warm to the touch, as if a door had never stood there at all. It's almost certainly a tall tale, frontier ghost story grafted onto a real and very public treasure craze. But here's the genuinely unsettling footnote, and this part is documented. Researchers who've studied Bosque's 1934 lizard people article believe it may be the original seed of modern conspiracy theories about reptilian beings hiding beneath the world's surface. One newspaper story under one hill in one city. And 90 years later, people on every continent are convinced lizards rule the earth from underground. There's one more thing on record that's hard to file away neatly. That same year, a woman named Edith Robinson, who lived in Pico Rivera and had nothing to do with Shufelt, reported a vision of her own, a vast, ancient city beneath the ground, a civilization with art and architecture finer than anything standing today, its tunnels running all the way to the sea. She put it in writing and mailed it to a journal of psychical research, dated late September 1934, the same season Shufelt's flooded shaft fell silent. 2 strangers, the same year, the same buried city under Los Angeles, and neither able to prove a word of it. Which leaves the one question that won't quite go away, actually under that hill. Here's what's true, stripped of every ghost. Fort Moore Hill is still there, capped now by a concrete memorial and a school, the slope quietly reshaped and built over until you'd never guess what once happened on it. The voids Shufelt mapped are still under the city because Los Angeles genuinely does sit above natural tunnels and gas pockets. No one has ever fully surveyed all of them. His shaft was sealed and forgotten. County Contract, the 50-die 50 split on a lost lizard city, is a real document that still exists. And no one in 90 years has ever gone back down to the depth where Shufelt swore the key room was waiting. Maybe it was a hoax. He was a swindler who lost his nerve. Maybe it was a delusion, and the flooding was a mercy that stopped him before the whole hill came down on his crew. Maybe the iron door is nothing but a story old men told to frighten boys off a dangerous slope. But strip away every maybe, and you're left with one plain, stubborn fact: a man convinced a government to help him dig toward a buried city beneath Los Angeles. He got close. Something stopped him cold. The hole was never opened again. The truth about Fort Moore Hill didn't die in 1934. It just got paved over. And the ground under this city keeps its secrets a great deal better than the city ever did. If a story like this is the kind of thing official history would rather you never went digging for, then you already know what to do. The shaft is still down there. So is whatever made him walk away.